North and South Korea share the same history, language, and ancestors. Yet today, one is ranked among the top 10 most innovative economies, the other among the poorest and most isolated. This isn't about culture, it's about control and who gets to throw the next punch. The jab of choice versus the punch of control. One fighter moves light on his feet, ducking, weaving, reading the crowd. The other leads with brute force. But in economics, the fight isn't over fists. It's about who decides what happens next. The invisible hand is what economist Adam Smith called the power of individual choices. He observed that when people act in their own self-interest, buying, selling, creating, they unknowingly shape entire economies. There's no need for someone to plan it all. Prices adjust like a reflex. Supply meets demand like a counterpunch. Now step into the ring with the heavy fist. Central planning. The belief that a government or committee should dictate how resources get used, who gets what, and how much. It sounds efficient until the punches start missing. Look at Germany after World War II. The country split in two. West Germany adopted market reforms. East Germany went full state control. Within a decade, West Germany, despite rubble and poverty, launched the Wirtschaftswunder, or economic miracle. GDP per capita surged. Shops overflowed. Workers bought Volkswagens and radios. By 1990, West German GDP per capita topped $15,000. East Germany's barely reached $6,000. In East Berlin, bread was cheap because prices were fixed, but it was also rationed, scarce, and often stale. Toilet paper became so precious that families reused newspapers. Meanwhile, in West Berlin, bakeries responded to customer preferences. If no one bought the rye, it disappeared. If cheesecake sold out, more was made tomorrow. The heavy fist swung hard, but it couldn't pivot. The invisible hand didn't hit harder. It just knew where to strike. And here's the twist. East Germans didn't tear down the Berlin Wall shouting, "Down with socialism." Many just wanted bananas, chocolate, and options. In round two, we'll see what happens when an economy faces rapid change, and which fighter can actually react in time. Who reacts faster, the crowd or the coach? Imagine a boxer who must wait for his coach's command before dodging a punch. By the time instructions arrive, the blow has landed. That's central planning. In contrast, the free market fighter moves instinctively, reacting in real time to every signal from the crowd. In economic terms, free markets respond instantly. Prices rise when goods are scarce, fall when they're abundant. Signals flow between millions of people, sellers, buyers, inventors, without a central referee. But in a centrally planned economy, changes require permission, approval, and reallocation from the top down. That delay is deadly. Take Taiwan in the 1950s. With a GDP per capita of just $250, the island had little but farmland and a refugee population. But after implementing land reform and embracing export-led capitalism, Taiwan let entrepreneurs lead the charge. By 2020, its GDP per capita passed $28,000. Today, Taiwan produces over 60% of the world's semiconductors and leads in advanced chip manufacturing. Now contrast that with the Soviet Union, where every economic adjustment had to pass through Gosplan, the central planning agency. When demand for cars surged in the 1970s, production couldn't keep up. A Soviet citizen waited 10 to 15 years to buy a Lada after paying in advance. If your needs changed mid-process, too bad. The plan was set. In 1976, Soviet agriculture collapsed from drought, but grain production couldn't shift fast enough. The USSR had to import over 16 million tons of US grain, a Cold War embarrassment. Meanwhile, in market economies, farmers plant based on forecasted prices and market data, adjusting crop types annually. The free market doesn't need to be told what the people want. It listens every minute. That's why it pivots like a seasoned fighter. The heavy fist, it waits for permission and often punches the air. In round three, we'll expose what happens when the heavy fist tries to flex too hard and ends up hitting itself in the face. When the heavy fist hits its own face. Some punches are meant for the opponent, but land right on your own jaw. That's exactly what happens when central planners follow their own rules so blindly they knock out their own economy. In a free market, bad ideas fail fast. But under central planning, failure is protected by fear, bureaucracy, and propaganda. The heavier the fist, the harder it hits itself. Look no further than the Soviet nail factory paradox. When factories were told to produce nails by weight, they made giant, useless spikes. When told to produce by quantity, they switched to tiny thumbtacks. Why? Because the system rewarded metrics, not usefulness. The result? Shelves full of things nobody needed. In 1986, a leaked Soviet report revealed that over 40% of tractors were inoperable, parked due to lack of spare parts, not engine failure. But since quotas focused on producing new tractors, repair infrastructure was ignored. It was easier to build a new machine than fix a broken one. During Brezhnev's stagnation era, 1964-1982, the USSR's GDP growth dropped from 6.1% in the 1950s to under 1.9% by the late 1970s. Consumer goods disappeared, innovation dried up, but on paper, everything looked fine, because statistics were manipulated to show planned success. Even China under Mao suffered similar blows. In the Great Leap Forward, 1958-1962, local officials inflated grain harvest numbers to please the Communist Party. Believing the inflated figures, the state requisitioned too much food, causing the worst man-made famine in history. Over 45 million people died, not from drought, but from forced policy. Markets may stumble, but they fall forward. Planned economies lock into place and collapse all at once. Here's the tragic irony. The heavy fist tries to control outcomes, but can't control the consequences. In round 4, we'll dive into how feedback works like defense, helping one system adapt while the other keeps swinging blind. Feedback versus fantasy. A smart fighter adjusts mid-match, shoulders roll, stance shifts, punches adapt. That's feedback. But a fighter who refuses to acknowledge he's losing, that's not toughness, that's delusion. In economic terms, feedback loops are survival tools. In free markets, if customers reject a product, it disappears. But under central planning, failure gets buried until it swells into collapse. Let's start with Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward. Local officials, terrified of punishment, faked crop reports to meet quotas. Central leaders believed the lies, so they took more grain than existed, leaving villages to starve. Between 1958 and 1962, at least 45 million people died. No one dared say the truth. Feedback was replaced by fantasy. Now contrast that with post-World War II Japan. After the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan rebuilt using American-style market economics. By 1968, it became the second largest economy in the world. Companies like Toyota adopted a feedback-based production model called Kaizen, where every worker could halt the line if something went wrong. Problems were fixed in real time, no waiting for orders from above. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union held on to failing industries for decades. The ZEAL automobile plant in Moscow kept building outdated cars into the 1990s, because that's what the 5-year plan said to do, even if no one wanted them. In the US, Netflix canceled over 150 original shows between 2015 and 2023, based purely on viewership data. Harsh, yes, but responsive. That's how markets use feedback. If people stop watching, the product dies. No debate, no bailout. Here's the paradox. Central planning feels secure, but ignores signals until it's too late. Free markets feel chaotic, but adjust instantly, like a seasoned fighter sensing a shift in the ring. In boxing, failing to adjust gets you knocked out. In economics, it leads to collapse. In round 5, we'll compare innovation versus imitation, why one system invents the next punch and the other just copies old moves. Innovation versus imitation. A great fighter doesn't just dodge and punch, he invents moves mid-fight. That's what free markets do best. But the heavy fist? It imitates old tactics, hoping brute force beats agility. Let's talk about South Korea versus North Korea, the ultimate economic split screen. In the 1950s, both nations were war-torn, poor, and agrarian. Today, South Korea ranks #6 on the Global Innovation Index. It's home to Samsung, LG, Hyundai, and a $1.7 trillion economy. North Korea? It's one of the world's most isolated and impoverished nations, with a GDP smaller than Vermont's. Why? South Korea embraced market-driven incentives. Private companies competed, failed, adapted, and soared. North Korea stuck with central planning, prioritizing loyalty over learning, slogans over solutions. In the USSR, innovation was viewed with suspicion. Scientists and engineers needed permission to experiment. In 1970, Soviet computer engineers developed the Elbrus I, a powerful processor, but without mass production or market testing, it never evolved. Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, private entrepreneurs backed by venture capital launched Apple, 1976, and Microsoft, 1975, products shaped directly by user demand. By the early 1980s, American PC sales passed 2 million units annually. The Soviet bloc, most households didn't even own a computer. The centrally planned system couldn't adapt to feedback or forecast needs. Even in modern China, this contrast remains. While the state directs investment, it's market-facing giants like Alibaba, Tencent, and BYD that drive innovation. In 2022 alone, China filed 1.58 million patents, most from private firms, not state bureaus. Innovation thrives when creators are free to fail, pivot, and profit. The invisible hand rewards creativity. The heavy fist fears it. And here's the irony. Even copycats fall behind, because without feedback, you don't know what to copy next. In round 6, we'll see what happens when the people, the crowd in the arena, step into the ring themselves. What happens when the crowd joins the ring? In most boxing matches, the crowd watches, but in the real economy, the people step into the ring. And that's when the true difference between systems shows. One empowers them to fight, the other tells them to sit still. In a free market system, every individual becomes a participant. Every dollar spent is a vote. Every choice shapes the ring. In command economies, the people are spectators, cheering or suffering, but rarely deciding. And when they try to act on their own, they're often punished. Take Argentina, a nation once wealthier than France. In the early 1900s, it was the 7th richest country in the world. But decades of state control, heavy-handed economic planning, and populist subsidies led to collapse after collapse. By 2023, inflation passed 115% and price controls backfired, causing mass shortages in supermarkets. Argentines now protest weekly, demanding less control, not more. Meanwhile, Singapore offers a different story. After independence in 1965, it had no natural resources and rampant poverty. But by building a rule of law-based, market-friendly system with strategic safety nets, it rose to become one of the top 5 richest nations by GDP per capita, surpassing $85,000 per citizen. In 1989, citizens of Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Hungary rose up, not just for free speech, but for free markets. They were tired of waiting in lines, tired of ration coupons, tired of watching innovation die behind bureaucratic curtains. The Velvet Revolution wasn't just political, it was economic. In modern Iran, waves of underground entrepreneurs operate black market businesses just to survive. From women selling cosmetics to illegal Bitcoin miners powering their rigs in the desert, the people are fighting, even if the state won't let them. Because when systems break, people don't wait for permission. They build their own arena. This wasn't theory. This was the fight that shaped our world. If you're ready to uncover the next round of hidden truths about power, freedom, and control, tap the screen now. Subscribe for more stories they never teach in school.